Welcome to Marin Poets Live. I'm Neshama Franklin. I work at the Fairfax Library and I love poetry, so it is a special pleasure for me to share this opportunity to introduce you to poets from our county in the flesh, as it were, as they read and discuss their work. Monthly tapings will be broadcast on Marin TV and then become part of a special page on our website, along with biographies of the poets and links to our collection. This is a partnership with the Marin Poetry Center. A common thread throughout the programs will be discovering how living in Marin has influenced their poetry. Those of you who already love poetry will appreciate this direct transmission from the poet to the listener, you. Those who might think of poetry as esoteric or abstract will discover how it can sing when read aloud. For this program, we will feature Prartho Sereno. Welcome, Prato. And boy, did I struggle to get the rar in your name.
Very good.
And before we even get our Marin poem, which we start with, tell me about Prato. Such a beautiful name.
Well, it's a name I got in India from a teacher there, and in 1980. And it means gratitude, and most of us had a theory that he gave names to help us move past our biggest weakness, so it's sort of the opposite of kvetch, is what I think.
Beautiful. Oh.
Yeah, and I've had it for now. A couple of weeks ago, I went past my 30th anniversary of having it, so I'm actually, more than half my life have been Prato.
Happy Prato to you, and great gratitude that you're on our show.
Thank you.
So let's now start with our Marin
great.
poem.
So I'm reading from this Finding Marin, Stories of Home anthology that was made some years ago. And many of the Marin poets are in here. And this one is called Our Secret. By early afternoon, we are haunted again. All of us a little bit lonesome for what we left behind when we packed up the VW or the station wagon. Or maybe we just grabbed hands and ran headlong into the deep end of the American dream. And now we are in it together, awash in the salt water of our well-kept secret. Our bodies ache for lightning bugs and summer rain, fresh peeled cactus, and the smell of adobe walls. Our daydreams are scored with snow against windows or a chorus of parrots in the tamarind trees. Even California's native son gets homesick, wishes he could walk through the belled door of the corner store or take the slow train home. Even the Miwok sighs with the sun's daily slide toward its hills of gold, nostalgic for the sound of his own footfalls on the soft and giving ground.
That is very lovely. Is that a post-retreat? After you had been to a silent retreat, perhaps?
No.
No?
No.
I mean, what, you know, the beautiful thing about poetry is you hear what you hear. And I
Yeah.
just finished a book about a silent retreat.
Well, that's
But-
interesting because meditation is a big part of my life. So, and I guess I go to poetry to get into that place. I see it as a spiritual practice.
Yes.
And the only way I can really hear those words, whatever words are going to come together and make a poem, is in a very quiet, private, out of this world kind of space, really.
Exactly, and that's always the beautiful tension between poets and their work, is that if you don't get it out there, you're talking to yourself,
Yes.
but you create it internally. I love the salt water, which of course to me is tears, as well as our ocean.
Exactly, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Salt shows up in a lot of my poems, actually.
Good.
I
Let's
like
have another.
Salt. Oh, good, okay, so let's see. I think, well, actually, there's a poem I wrote. I guess some of my influence is the people around me. And so, you know, there's certain things that stir me to write. And so this is a poem that also is in Marin, and it's about my boyfriend, my sweetheart, who I've lived with for 13 years now. And it's about his love of distance, and that's what it's called. Yeah. And it takes place, there's a mountain here, and it's Mount Tam. So,
Yes.
Good. So, love of distance. He's enchanted with the idea of reaching through space, wants me to wait by the window while he climbs the far-off mountain, sets up the light, flashes something back in Morse code. He says we should begin studying our dots and dashes, along with smoke signals, the extravagantly long rolled R's of Spanish, hand gestures for the deaf. Or we could take the rim trail, one of us staying on the southern lip, while the other heads north, till our bodies shrink to the size of tree frogs. Then we can converse across the canyon without effort, no need to raise our voices. He is certain this will work, that the atmosphere at these heights will bear our words with a clarity as yet unknown to us. My faith in these things is weaker. I dare not tell him the Far Eastern stories, the one where the poet builds two houses on opposite shores of the lake, gives one to his sweetheart, who he tells to go in, take up the dulcimer or needlework, learn to love the lonely ways. Think of the surprise, he says, one of our faces suddenly shining between the blackbirds and reeds.
That's very beautiful. And I love the idea that you have a partner who wants expression in other ways, where your stock in trade is words and your food is words. What a good balance.
It is good, actually. It's
yes.
good. Yeah, he's a good audience and a good catalyst.
Excellent. Let's have more.
Good.
I'm enjoying these so much.
Oh, good. So this one is one of these poems that gets away from you. It started out to be a poem about my grandsons, who I adore, and they're twins. And they have spent almost every summer with me for parts of it. And so this summer we went to upstate New York, where my family has a cottage, and they went immediately out in a boat, went fishing, and I immediately fell into a heap and slept. Well, then they came in and they jumping on the bed that they caught all these fish. So that was the idea of the poem, but you'll see it gets away. So it's called Fish. We have to do our part, it seems. Make, I have it by heart, but not quite. Make small but wholehearted gestures. Fling, for example, thin silver offerings and arcs over the water so they glint against the sky like dragonflies. Young boys catch on quickest. With the day swimming through them by breakfast, their laps are full of bluegill and perch. My friend Bodie casts his line into the mirror each morning. How come you ain't happy? He croons to the fish in the glass. He knows how unexpectedly grace might leap from the water, how entranced grace is with our rarefied air and light. Coleridge kept his hatches unbattened so the depth dwellers could slither in and out, strange primordial creatures transparent as glass, their phosphorescent skeletons flickering in the murk. Maybe he knew that every gesture is a prayer, and every prayer is answered, and every answer is a fish. That's why we see them circling over deathbeds, Rabindranath, shouting at the Brahmin priest who is praying that the poet be saved from the wheel of birth and death. Stop all this nonsense. You tell God I want his earth and his seas. Tell him I'm hungry for fish. And Gertrude Stein, grasping at her last straws, what is the answer, she warbles, but then shakes her head and laughs. All those years of hook, line, and sinker, and it turns out I am the fish.
Well, you said it got away, but it didn't. You reeled it in. But you reeled it in at such a distance.
Yes.
And I love the way it starts with the young who don't have all these impediments and these concerns. So they can get it right away.
Exactly. Yes, that's it. Oh, beautiful listening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's more. We only have about 3 minutes left, and I just want to cram the poetry in.
Oh, good. Okay, good. So, okay, maybe something a little. Well, I love this one. It's the end of my book, so it's called For the Drifters. And this one is about my friend Bodie, who actually was in the last poem. And he turned 80. He's now 87, but when he turned 80, he said, I don't know how this happened. He said, I was a drifter. He said, I don't know how I ended up just drifting and making it. So this poem is called For the Drifters. They say the 7 continents are still drifting, nudged each year a little further into the blue. And through the sand and waterways drift the herds, goat tribes and ant colonies, pods of toads and knots of whales. For millennia, dust has drifted in and out of doorways and in their seasons pollen and snow. It turns out even glass drifts. The vertical panes that hold our world in place are more like sheets of rain than walls, their bottoms growing thicker down the years. And so it seems we're all leaning on water, but some of us lean harder, deeper. This poem is for you, the fallen, with limbs worn to silk. For you, light-footed ones, tramped on in the fray. This poem is for all of you solitary singers, awash in your own song. Sleep well tonight, my troubadours. Let the boat of your regret unmoor itself and drift away. The shimmer of harbor lights will reappear when that great dark ship floats out.
These poems are prayers to me. You know, I do not have organized religion, but they are invocations, evocations. They call to the very best in us. And yet they contain all those wonderful sensual details of how stuff feels and works. I loved in the first poem all those little pieces of home. And first I thought you were talking about your own home, but then we were talking about everybody's home, everybody's little piece of home. Do you have a really tiny one?
Let's see, I do. I have something from my new collection.
Yes, and I have to mention that you are also an artist.
Yeah.
And that book will be on display, but it's it'll be up there. It'll be up there. But I didn't want to leave that out because that eye and that hand is also with us in the words.
So I want to do this last one that is that I wrote a couple of years ago when I was living in Syracuse in the winters, and it was very dark and very lonely. And this is called, and I learned something. It's called Morning Raga, which is an Indian form of music. The birds still folded in their branches, trucks asleep in their black-topped yards. The storms unwound. The music steps toward us through the dark, tabla, ektara, bamboo flute. The strings and skins, the woodwinds know in their blind love where to dig the well.
And there we leave it with a dug well through music. It's been just such a joy. Prartho. I'm doing it again. Sereno.
Very good.
Yes,
Neshama.
thank you.
Thank you.